Introduction. The helper WHO destroyed her own relationships. Jane prided herself on being the friend everyone could count on. She was the one who dropped everything to help with breakups, job losses, and family crises. She gave thoughtful advice, remembered important dates, and always knew exactly what her friends needed to hear. Her relationships felt meaningful and deep, until they started falling apart one by one. It began subtly. Jane noticed her best friend Jane seemed distant after she'd offered to help reorganize her apartment during a stressful time. When Jane declined, Jane felt hurt and kept bringing it up, explaining how the organization would really help reduce Jane's anxiety. She sent articles about decluttering, and even showed up with storage containers as a surprise. "I just want to help you," Jane said when Jane seemed frustrated. "I can see you're struggling, and I know what would make things better." But Jane pulled away further. Soon she stopped returning calls altogether. The pattern repeated with other friends. Ethan, a close friend from college, stopped inviting her to group gatherings after she repeatedly corrected his parenting choices for his own good. Another friend, Jane, ended their friendship entirely after Jane staged what she called an intervention about Jane's dating patterns, complete with printed relationship advice and a list of red flags she'd observed. The breaking point came during a confrontation with her remaining close friend, Jane. "You don't actually help people," Jane said, her voice shaking with years of suppressed frustration. "You control them. You decide what they need, you decide what's best for them, and then you get angry when they don't want your help. It's exhausting being your friend." Jane was devastated. She'd genuinely believed she was being loving and supportive. She'd invested so much energy in caring for others, sacrificing her own needs to be there for them. How could her kindness be seen as controlling? How could her desire to help be toxic? But as she sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the silence of lost friendships, Jane began to recognize an uncomfortable truth. Her helpful behaviors had indeed been controlling. She'd been so focused on fixing others that she'd never learned to simply be present with them. She'd offered solutions instead of listening, imposed her vision of their best life instead of supporting their choices, and manipulated situations under the guise of caring. Most painfully, she realized she'd been doing this to avoid her own discomfort with uncertainty and her fear of being truly vulnerable. It was easier to focus on others' problems than to face her own need for control and her terror of being rejected for who she really was. Breaking free from destructive patterns while staying true to yourself. This book exists because too many of us are trapped in relationship patterns that cause pain, both to ourselves and to the people we care about. Like Jane, we often engage in behaviors we believe are loving, helpful, or necessary, without realizing how these patterns push others away and prevent us from experiencing genuine connection. The traditional approach to relationship improvement often falls into two extremes. Either it focuses solely on changing your behavior to please others, essentially asking you to abandon your authentic self, or it encourages you to prioritize your needs so completely that you become disconnected from others. Both approaches leave you feeling incomplete and unsatisfied. This book offers a third way, a path that allows you to transform destructive relationship patterns while maintaining your authentic identity and personal boundaries. Through a hands-on workshop experience, you'll learn to identify the toxic patterns that keep you stuck in cycles of conflict and pain, develop communication skills that honor both your needs and others, and build thriving relationships that don't require you to become someone you're not. The goal isn't to make you a better person according to someone else's standards. It's to help you become more genuinely yourself in relationship with others, to develop the freedom to respond rather than react, to communicate clearly without losing your voice, and to love others without sacrificing your own well-being. This transformation is possible, and it doesn't require you to choose between being authentic and being connected. You can have both. Recognizing yourself in the patterns. This book is written for anyone who has ever felt trapped in relationship patterns that seem to repeat, despite their best efforts to change. You might see yourself in one or more of these experiences. You recognize destructive patterns, but feel powerless to change them. Perhaps you find yourself having the same arguments with your partner, repeatedly attracting friends who take advantage of your generosity, or consistently feeling misunderstood, despite your efforts to communicate clearly. You can see the patterns, but you don't know how to break free from them without losing important relationships or compromising who you are. You're stuck repeating the same conflicts across different relationships. The names and faces change, but the dynamics remain eerily similar. You might find yourself always playing the role of the rescuer, the peacekeeper, the rebel, or the victim. These roles feel familiar and safe, but they also feel limiting and frustrating. You want to show up differently, but you're not sure how. You want to improve your relationships without becoming a doormat. You've perhaps read advice about being more accommodating, more understanding, or more forgiving, but following this guidance left you feeling resentful and invisible. You don't want to sacrifice your needs and boundaries for the sake of harmony, but you also don't want to be selfish or difficult. You're looking for a way to be both authentic and connected. You're tired of choosing between being right and being loved. You may have noticed that you often find yourself in situations where you feel forced to choose between standing up for yourself and maintaining peace in your relationships. This false choice leaves you feeling frustrated and lonely, whether you choose to assert yourself or accommodate others. You want practical tools, not just theories. You're done with relationship advice that sounds good in theory, but falls apart in real-life situations. You want concrete strategies you can use immediately, exercises that help you practice new skills, and frameworks that guide you through difficult conversations and challenging dynamics. You're ready to do the work. Most importantly, you're willing to look honestly at your own patterns, even when it's uncomfortable. You understand that transformation requires more than just understanding what's wrong. It requires consistent practice and a willingness to try new approaches even when they feel awkward or scary. If any of these descriptions resonate with you, this book will provide the roadmap you've been seeking. You don't need to be in crisis to benefit from this work. Whether you're dealing with minor relationship frustrations or major relationship breakdowns, the tools and frameworks in this book will help you create the kinds of connections you truly want. The opposing viewpoints synthesis approach. Most relationship books ask you to choose sides. They present one approach as the right way and dismiss alternatives as wrong or harmful. This creates a false dilemma that leaves many readers feeling like the advice doesn't quite fit their situation or their personality. This book takes a fundamentally different approach through what I call the opposing viewpoints synthesis method. Instead of presenting a single correct way to handle relationship challenges, each chapter explores multiple perspectives on common relationship dilemmas, perspectives that often seem contradictory or mutually exclusive. For example, when addressing the challenge of setting boundaries, traditional approaches might tell you to either put yourself first or be more considerate of others. The synthesis approach recognizes that both perspectives contain valuable truth and helps you find ways to honor your boundaries while remaining genuinely caring toward others. Here's what makes this approach uniquely effective. Real workshop format with practical application. This isn't a book you read passively. Each chapter functions as a workshop session, complete with exercises, reflection questions, and real-world application challenges. You'll work through actual scenarios from your own life, not just hypothetical examples. The exercises are designed to help you practice new skills in low-stakes situations before applying them to your most challenging relationships. Focus on transformation without self-abandonment. Unlike approaches that ask you to fundamentally change your personality or suppress your natural tendencies, this method helps you work with your authentic self to create healthier patterns. You'll learn to channel your existing strengths in more effective ways rather than trying to become someone you're not. Integration of opposing truths. Life is complex, and relationship challenges rarely have simple solutions. This book teaches you to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously and find creative solutions that honor competing needs and values. You'll develop the mental flexibility to navigate nuanced situations with confidence. Emphasis on personal agency. Rather than focusing on how to change others or how to adapt yourself to others' expectations, this approach centers on expanding your own choices and responses. You'll develop a toolkit of options for any relationship challenge, allowing you to choose your response based on your values and goals rather than reacting from old patterns. Case studies from real transformation. Throughout the book, you'll encounter detailed case studies of people who have successfully transformed their relationship patterns using these methods. These aren't idealized success stories, they're honest accounts of the messy, non-linear process of change, including setbacks, breakthroughs, and the ongoing work of maintaining healthier patterns. Your transformation journey. This book will take you on a carefully structured journey from recognizing destructive patterns to implementing lasting change. Each chapter builds on the previous one, creating a comprehensive transformation experience that addresses both the psychological roots of relationship problems and the practical skills needed for healthier connections. Phase 1. Recognition and awareness begins with helping you identify the specific patterns that keep you stuck. You'll learn to recognize the difference between surface-level relationship problems and the deeper patterns that create them. Through detailed self-assessment exercises, you'll map your own relationship patterns and understand how they developed. This phase also introduces you to the concept of opposing viewpoints and helps you see how your current either-or thinking might be limiting your options. Phase 2. Understanding the roots dives deeper into why these patterns exist and what purposes they've served in your life. You'll explore how your attachment style, family history, and past experiences have shaped your approach to relationships. More importantly, you'll learn to see these patterns with compassion rather than judgment, understanding that they developed as adaptive responses to earlier challenges. Phase 3. Developing new skills introduces practical communication tools and relationship strategies. Each chapter in this phase focuses on a specific skill set: listening without fixing, expressing needs without demanding, setting boundaries without walls, managing conflict without winning or losing, and supporting others without taking responsibility for their lives. You'll practice these skills through guided exercises and real-world challenges. Phase 4. Integration and implementation helps you apply your new skills to your most challenging relationships. You'll work through case studies that mirror common relationship dilemmas, learning to use the opposing viewpoints synthesis approach to find creative solutions. This phase includes frameworks for handling difficult conversations, strategies for maintaining new patterns under pressure, and methods for continuing your growth over time. Phase 5. Sustaining change addresses the reality that transformation is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. You'll develop systems for maintaining your new patterns, strategies for handling setbacks, and methods for continuing to grow and evolve in your relationships. Throughout each phase, you'll encounter interactive exercises designed to help you apply the concepts to your own life immediately. These aren't busy work, they're carefully crafted experiences that help you practice new ways of thinking and behaving in safe, controlled environments before applying them to your real relationships. You'll also find detailed case studies that illustrate how others have navigated similar challenges. These stories show both the successes and struggles of real people working to transform their relationship patterns, helping you normalize the ups and downs of your own journey. The opposing perspective analysis sections in each chapter will challenge you to consider multiple viewpoints on relationship dilemmas, helping you develop the mental flexibility to find creative solutions to complex problems. Rather than memorizing rules about what to do in specific situations, you'll develop the thinking skills to navigate novel challenges with confidence. Your commitment to transformation. Before you turn the page to begin Chapter 1, I want to invite you to make a commitment not to me, but to yourself. This book will only transform your relationships if you're willing to engage fully with the process, and that requires more than just reading the words on the page. Commit to radical honesty about your patterns. The exercises in this book will ask you to examine your own behavior with unflinching honesty. This means acknowledging when you've been controlling, manipulative, or hurtful, even when your intentions were good. It means recognizing when you've abandoned yourself to please others, even when it felt noble. It means seeing your patterns clearly, without the filters of justification or self-protection that usually keep them hidden. This level of honesty isn't comfortable, but it's essential. You cannot change patterns you refuse to see clearly. The good news is that this honesty doesn't require self-judgment or shame, it simply requires a willingness to see what is, so you can choose what will be. Commit to engaging fully with the workshop exercises. Each chapter contains practical exercises designed to help you develop new skills and insights. These aren't optional add-ons to the real content, they are the real content. Reading about relationship skills is like reading about swimming. You can understand the theory, but you won't develop the ability until you get in the water. Set aside dedicated time for the exercises. Create a private space where you can reflect and write without interruption. Be willing to feel awkward or uncertain as you practice new approaches. Remember that competence comes through practice, not through understanding. Commit to patience with the process. Relationship patterns developed over years or decades don't change overnight. You'll have breakthrough moments and setback periods. You'll master some skills quickly and struggle with others for months. You'll have relationships that improve dramatically and others that remain challenging despite your best efforts. This is normal and expected. Transformation is not a linear process, and sustainable change takes time. Commit to staying with the work even when progress feels slow, even when old patterns resurface, even when you're tempted to give up and return to familiar ways of being. Commit to compassion for yourself and others. As you begin to see your patterns more clearly and develop new skills, you might feel frustrated with your past behavior or impatient with others who haven't done this work. Practice extending the same compassion to yourself and others that you hope to receive. Everyone is doing the best they can with the tools and awareness they currently have. Your willingness to grow doesn't make you superior to those who haven't begun this journey yet. Your mistakes don't make you a bad person deserving of punishment. Hold yourself and others with gentle firmness, clear about what needs to change, compassionate about the difficulty of changing it. Are you ready to begin this transformation journey? Are you willing to discover who you might become in relationships when you're no longer trapped by old patterns? Are you prepared to do the work required to build the kinds of connections you truly want? If so, turn the page. Your new relationship patterns are waiting for you. 1. The mirror cracked, recognizing your toxic fingerprint. Dissecting your love story patterns. Most people remember their relationship conflicts like movie scenes, dramatic moments filled with raised voices, slammed doors, and hurt feelings. But these vivid memories often miss the real story happening underneath the surface. The true patterns that shape our relationships exist in the spaces between the big fights, in the small moments when we choose our words, and in the automatic responses we don't even notice ourselves making. Think about your last 5 relationship conflicts. Not just romantic relationships, but friendships, family dynamics, or work partnerships too. Each one probably felt unique at the time, driven by specific circumstances or particular stressors. Yet when you step back and look at them together, something interesting happens. You start to see your toxic fingerprint. Your toxic fingerprint is the unique combination of behaviors, reactions, and patterns that you bring to relationship conflicts. Just like no two people have the same physical fingerprints, no two people create relationship damage in exactly the same way. Some people become silent and withdraw when they feel threatened. Others attack with words or criticism. Some try to control every detail of a situation, while others create chaos and drama. The key word here is automatic. Your toxic fingerprint isn't something you consciously choose. It's a collection of learned responses that kick in when you feel vulnerable, scared, or misunderstood. These patterns developed over years, shaped by your family background, past relationships, and the coping strategies you learned to survive emotional pain. Pattern recognition through timeline mapping. Creating a visual timeline of your relationship conflicts might sound like homework, but it's actually one of the most eye-opening exercises you can do. This isn't about beating yourself up or keeping score of who was wrong. It's about becoming a detective in your own life story. Start with your most recent significant conflict. Write down these basic facts. What triggered the conflict initially? How you felt in your body, tense, hot, sick to your stomach. The first words you spoke when things got heated. How the other person responded to those words. What you did or said next. How the conflict ended. Now do the same thing for 4 more conflicts from the past year or 2. Try to pick conflicts with different people if possible. Your partner, a friend, a family member, maybe a coworker. Once you have all 5 conflicts mapped out, look for patterns. You might notice that you always start conflicts the same way, perhaps by bringing up past grievances or using accusatory language. Maybe you discover that you consistently escalate when someone doesn't respond to you immediately, or that you shut down completely when someone raises their voice. The timeline reveals something crucial. Your conflicts aren't random events. They follow a script that you helped write, even if you weren't aware you were doing it. Emotional archaeology. Beneath every toxic behavior lies an unmet need or unhealed wound. This is where emotional archaeology comes in. The process of digging beneath your surface reactions to understand what's really driving them. When Eleanor started doing this work, she discovered that her tendency to criticize her partner stemmed from a deep fear of being seen as stupid or incompetent. Her criticism wasn't really about his messy kitchen habits or forgotten anniversaries. It was her way of trying to feel smart and valuable in the relationship. Gabriel realized that his habit of giving his girlfriend the silent treatment wasn't about being naturally quiet or introverted. It was a protection mechanism he learned as a child when his parents fought constantly. Silence had kept him safe then, but now it was destroying his adult relationships. The fears driving toxic behavior often include fear of abandonment, leading to clingy or controlling behavior. Fear of being worthless, leading to people-pleasing or criticism of others. Fear of being powerless, leading to aggressive or manipulative tactics. Fear of being hurt, leading to emotional walls and distance. Understanding your underlying fears doesn't excuse toxic behavior, but it does help you address the root cause instead of just trying to manage the symptoms. Impact versus intent analysis. One of the biggest blind spots in relationships is the gap between what we mean to communicate and what other people actually hear. Your intentions might be pure, but if your impact consistently creates hurt or distance, you need to pay attention to that disconnect. Eleanor thought she was being helpful when she pointed out her husband's mistakes or suggested better ways he could handle situations. Her intent was to support and improve their life together. But the impact of her words made her husband feel criticized and inadequate, like nothing he did was ever good enough. This gap between intent and impact often reveals important information about your communication style, your assumptions about others, and the way your own emotional state colors your words. Document this gap by asking yourself, what was I trying to accomplish with my words or actions? How did the other person actually respond? What might they have heard or felt instead of what I intended? What patterns do I notice in these disconnects? The goal isn't to become perfect at predicting how others will respond. It's to become more aware of your own communication habits and more curious about how others experience you in conflict. Tomorrow we'll explore how blame becomes the favorite weapon in relationship conflicts, but for now, focus on understanding your unique patterns without judgment. Just awareness. Just truth. Just the beginning of real change. The Great Divide. In the world of relationship conflict, 2 types of people dominate the landscape, each convinced they're taking the moral high ground while actually digging themselves deeper into toxic patterns. You probably recognize them immediately because you've encountered them in your own life. Maybe you've even been one of them yourself. On one side, you have the brutal honesty champions who believe that truth gives them a free pass to deliver harsh feedback without considering the emotional wreckage they leave behind. On the other side, you find the perpetual victims who can spot everyone else's flaws with laser precision while remaining completely blind to their own role in relationship breakdowns. Both positions feel righteous. Both provide emotional protection. And both keep people trapped in the same destructive patterns they learned through their toxic fingerprint work in the previous section. The divide between these two extremes represents one of the biggest obstacles to healthy relationships, because each position contains just enough truth to feel justified while missing the bigger picture entirely. The brutal honesty defense. People who hide behind brutal honesty have turned truth into a weapon, and they wield it with the confidence of someone who believes good intentions excuse bad delivery. They're the ones who say things like, "I'm just being honest," right after crushing someone's feelings, or "someone had to tell you," after delivering unsolicited criticism. Henry was a master of this approach. He prided himself on being the person who would tell you what everyone else was thinking, but too polite to say. When his teenage daughter came home excited about making the school play, his first response was to point out that drama wasn't a practical career path, and she should focus on more realistic goals. When his wife gained weight after their second child, he suggested she might want to consider a gym membership for her health. He genuinely believed he was being helpful. The brutal honesty defense operates on several flawed assumptions. That timing doesn't matter as long as the information is accurate. That emotional delivery is less important than factual content. That other people's feelings are their own responsibility to manage. That being right justifies causing emotional harm. What these people don't recognize is that their honesty often serves their own emotional needs more than it helps others. Henry felt anxious when people in his life made choices he disagreed with, and his harsh feedback was actually his way of trying to control outcomes and reduce his own discomfort. His wife finally helped him see that his daughter had stopped sharing good news with him, because she'd learned that his response would always include criticism or warnings. His helpful honesty had cost him the very connection he thought he was protecting. The brutal honesty defense creates emotional distance, while the person using it remains convinced they're being a good friend, parent, or partner. They focus so intensely on being factually correct that they miss the relational damage they're creating. The perpetual victim stance. On the opposite end of the spectrum, perpetual victims have mastered the art of spotting everyone else's toxic behavior while remaining completely blind to their own contributions to relationship problems. They collect evidence of how badly others treat them, like some people collect stamps, always ready to present their case for why they're the wronged party. Chloe fell into this pattern consistently at work and in her personal relationships. She could give you detailed accounts of how her boss overlooked her contributions, how her friends never called her first, and how her family took her for granted. She had examples and stories for every slight, real or perceived, and she genuinely felt like the world was treating her unfairly. What Chloe couldn't see was her own pattern of responding defensively to any feedback, no matter how gently delivered. Assuming negative intent behind neutral actions. Keeping score of who did what for whom. Using guilt and martyrdom to try to control others' behavior. When her colleague suggested she might have misunderstood an email, Chloe immediately launched into a detailed explanation of how everyone at work talked down to her. When her sister didn't call on her birthday, she spent weeks nursing the hurt instead of picking up the phone herself. The perpetual victim stance provides powerful psychological benefits. It protects the ego from having to examine personal flaws, creates a sense of moral superiority, and generates sympathy from others. But it also keeps people stuck in the same painful relationship patterns because they never address their own role in creating them. Both positions, brutal honesty and perpetual victimhood, serve as shields against the vulnerability required for real relationship growth. The middle path of authentic responsibility. True relationship health lies in the space between these two extremes. It requires what we might call authentic responsibility, the ability to own your impact on others while maintaining healthy boundaries about what you're actually responsible for. This middle path involves speaking truth with emotional intelligence and proper timing, acknowledging your contributions to relationship problems without taking on others' emotions, Giving feedback from a place of care rather than frustration or control. Receiving feedback.